It's still Adrian, but this time I have some women who are exceptional when it comes to talking about things that largely advance women in our communities, particularly abortion rights. That's Sunsara Taylor, co-host of the RNL, that's Revolution, Nothing Less, and Lori Sokol, that's Executive Director of Women's eNews. Thank you so much for joining us, Sunsara and Lori.
It's a real pleasure to be with you, Adrian.
Yes, very much so. I agree with that.
Yes, and it's a pleasure to have you all here. The thing is, it's like we have a nice percentage of our population facing a number of issues when it comes to restrictions on our bodies. Essentially, what's the update here? If you want to go ahead and share first, Sunsara, please do.
Yeah, we're in the middle of an abortion rights emergency, which Texas, people should know, has been under a near total abortion ban for over 6 months. And the Supreme Court is currently considering a case that could overturn Roe v. Wade, the landmark 1973 decision that legalized abortion for women. And anticipating that this will happen, states across the country packed with fascist legislatures are like in a race to figure out who can do the most vicious, cruel abortion bans. Idaho just introduced a law that would incentivize rapists and their families to sue to prevent a woman from terminating her pregnancy. Missouri passed a law that would introduce a law that would ban abortions even in the cases of ectopic pregnancies, which are never viable. It's when the egg implants outside the uterus and often lethal to a woman. And they added a ban that would restrict a woman from traveling to another state. So they're literally saying that a woman should die. And what we're facing is within a matter of a few short months, half the country could lose access to abortion, and the whole assault on women everywhere would accelerate. And I just want to say that forcing women to have children against their will is a form of enslavement. This is what we're facing. And this is why Lori and I initiated riseupforabortionrights.org to bring people into the streets to say this must not happen. We cannot allow this to go down.
No, we can't, not at all. And so I'm so grateful that both of you have come together to raise awareness, to make change. Lori, I'd love to hear your thoughts on essentially this whole new, it almost seems like a new era in terms of the attack on women and our bodies.
Well, it may seem like a new era, but unfortunately, the underpinnings of it have been building and increasing for many years. And I think they particularly culminated when Donald Trump became president, because he allowed this really insane brutality against women's reproductive rights to build beyond, since Roe v. Wade had become law in the early 70s. We have never seen this assault on women's reproductive rights before then. But let me also say that this isn't about, those who are anti-choice. It's not about saving the lives of babies, not at all. I mean, let's be honest here. If you were to look at the rates, if you look at countries where abortion is legal and where abortion is illegal, there's no significant difference between the number of abortions women have in these countries. It's just that 30,000 women on average die in countries where it's illegal. Okay, that's from botched abortions, which is going to be happening here in the US as well. So you were talking about tens of thousands of women potentially dying from this. What they really are looking to do long term, and this is very important, because when people listen, they think about abortion rights, they think only about how this impacts women. And since women are still, second-class citizens in this patriarchal society, those who are not women, or those who don't have daughters or sisters, or they feel they're not going to be impacted by this, but they are, because what Roe v. Wade also solidified was the right to privacy, which affects every single American. So it may be abortion now, but then it's going to be right to contraception. It's going to be how to raise one's children. It's going to be how to maintain family relationships. Who can live in your house with you? Brother, sister, aunts, uncles, parents, etc. It's also going to impact marriage equality, interracial marriage, and already we see in Texas the Don't Say Gay bill, right? Not allowed to discuss, to teach anything about homosexuality or transgenderism. What if you have kids who have two mothers or two fathers? How are they supposed to think of themselves right? If it's against the law to even mention it or talk about it. So this is just the beginning of what fascists are looking to do in this country, the Republicans who are against reproductive choice. It's going to affect every single American in one way or another. So if we don't stop it now, this is really our last chance.
Yes, yes. And as you were talking about that, Lori, it was really resounding with me. All I was hearing in my head were the Supreme Court decisions, Griswold in Texas, Loving Virginia, so on and so forth. And the fact that some of these things were passed some 50 years ago at the most, yet at the same time, they can be reversed in a moment's notice, especially given the very conservative court we have. And you're absolutely right. The thought that we could lose right to contraceptive, we could lose a right to privacy, Lawrence v. Texas, all of these things that have allowed us to live our lives and to allow people of regardless of what political party they're a part of, just to operate, that could be rolled back. And so we are truly heading toward that handmaid's tale. And so, Sunsara, I would love to know, what do you think we need to do to stop this train now before it steamrolls every right that we have as individuals?
Well, I want to start by appreciating how you asked the question, because it's the right question. It's how do we stop this train now before it steamrolls further, which is the opposite of what the so-called leaders, or most of the so-called leaders of the so-called women's movement, are doing. And I have to call this out to begin with, because the heads of the mainstream organizations are telling us the best we can do is prepare for post-Roe. Prepare for Roe v. Wade to fall. Help women learn how to induce their own abortions. Help women to travel to states outside of their own as it gets banned where they are, and to try to pass some local legislation in a few places to protect abortion after the legal right and protection falls nationwide. And what we have said, this is capitulating in advance. It will foreclose the lives of women, and it will give these fascists a chance to put their foot on the accelerator even more and gain even more ground. So we have to draw a line now. And what needs to happen, and the reason I'm wearing this green bandana, is because we need to learn a lesson from the women of Argentina, the women in Colombia, the women in Mexico, women who went into the streets and waged massive, sustained protests again and again, where they changed the whole political atmosphere. And they tore down anti-abortion restrictions in those countries. They made what seemed impossible possible through their struggle. And so what we are calling for in riseupforabortionrights.org, and it's the number 4, is we're calling on people to join us in the streets in protests that grow. And that not just a one-day protest, but again and again, students walking out of school, professionals coming out in their white coats or their professional associations, people from different walks of life, people speaking in the arts and the sciences and wearing this green. On April 8th is a national day of wearing green across the country. It's a Friday. And then April 9th, we're calling people back into the streets. We just did protests on International Women's Day in a dozen cities. We want these to be even bigger, with thousands and thousands of people to wake up and impact millions more. They don't even know this emergency is happening because the Democratic Party has been silent about it, because the so-called leaders of the so-called women's movement are not sounding the alarm and calling people into the streets. So by being into the streets ourselves, we want to wake up many more people to then join us and create such an outpouring from below, such a massive refusal to let this go down, that we change the atmosphere throughout society so that the Supreme Court has to recalculate based on the demand from below. The state legislatures have to recalculate based on what we are just saying in the streets with our bodies.
That seems like a very, very powerful movement. The fact of this thought that we need to make noise and disrupt to make the movement. And I am definitely a fan of that. And it's so incredibly important. And the thing is, we've seen it operate and to do pretty well, right, Lori? We had women in Argentina and Colombia recently winning historic victories when it came to abortion rights, and they took to the streets. What was the secret, or what did they have that we may need?
Well, I don't think it's a secret. People in the US may think it's a secret. For some reason, we don't feel that it's as urgent to step out in the streets. And I have to tell you personally, as someone who's been writing about women's equality and rights for a couple of decades, I also did not go out into the street until this last month and a half. And I've marched and I've spoken at 3 rallies thus far, because I thought to myself, what kind of a feminist would I be if I did not step up now and really be truthful and honest, and join, my sisters and some brothers in walking and marching, because this is really gravely serious. And if anyone wants to call themselves supportive of women, of their rights, feminists, you have to be out there in the streets. Yeah, COVID is around the world, right? COVID was in Argentina. COVID was in Colombia. COVID is in Mexico. But it didn't stop them. We don't want to say it's too late, and then we have to go backwards again. Go backwards, and women are going to die. So women are going to die. So for every person who does not step out and step up and walk and march in the streets with us, blood is on their hands for every woman who will die from botched abortions in this country.
And it's incredibly sad. And I wish I felt more moved in the thought that Americans would care, but we see femicide every single day. And so I really do hope that there is something that wakes people up and makes them realize that the rights that they have can't be taken away. But right now, with a lot of people focusing on the war going on over in Europe and Asia, it's one of those things where I'm very, very afraid that people don't necessarily get it. But Sunsara, I'd love to ask you in these last few seconds that we have available, for those people who do get it and those who want to learn more so that they do get it, where can they go to learn more about the organization you all founded?
It's called RiseUp4AbortionRights.org. It's the number 4. It's RiseUp4AbortionRights.org. And I just have to say that what we need is courage. What we need is hope. What we need is those who do understand the emergency to stand up, because that itself is contagious. We are the majority. People support this right. It doesn't count unless you show it and get in the streets. But if you do, don't underestimate what we can accomplish. There are millions of lives at stake. All of them are going to be touched. We need to mobilize them now. And I think there's every basis to do that, but it takes stepping in right now. So I want to call on everybody to do that. Rise up, number 4, abortionrights.org. And thank you so much, Adrienne, for having us on.
Thank you so much for joining us. And yes, those out there, viewers who do get it, please wake others up, because they're not woken up yet. And we need them to understand that everything is on the line right now. And we could stop it now, but only if they get out there in the streets. Thank you so much for joining me. Sunsara Taylor, co-host of the RNL, Revolution Nothing Less, and Lori Sokol, Executive Director of Women's eNews. Thank you so much for joining us and uplifting the message. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.